Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spin Rack, and we also have.
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
So I'm going to hand it off to the comic book hero and let him do his thing. What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the great comic book sell-off of 2022. We had bonkers numbers in 2019, 2020, 2021, and for some reason, people don't like comic books anymore in 2022, and they are selling, selling, selling. Okay, guys are wringing their hands. They don't know what the hell is going on. They're running out of the market. They're like, oh Lord, why did I spend all this money on this trash?
So what
So
are they specific? You saying they're selling everything back?
not every. Well, most of this is getting sold back to the dealers who are gonna like
Oh,
hoard all the. Who are gonna? It's this is like trading places where these guys are gonna come over, sell, 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 and then
oh
okay,
yeah.
and then they're gonna buy it at ridiculously. They're gonna buy it at low amounts, and it's gonna come back again, and they'll sell it high. But right now, this is pretty much where it should be because a lot of money was made 2019, 2020, 21.
Hmm.
Those years, at least for me, those numbers, well, I'm a little bit different. My numbers tend to be better than market when I sell, but that's just me. I don't try to just move product as quickly as possible. I give it a value. I figure either I'll sell it or eventually the value will get there and I'll sell it then. Sometimes I price it like I had a copy of Shuri that I had a copy of Black Panther #2. It was a 9.8. It was signed by the cover artist. And originally, when I listed it, I think I was asking $350. And by the time I sold it for like close to 2,500.
Hmm.
And I got offers during that period, but I saw that the book kept trending upwards. So I said, I'm not going to sell it at this time. So, you get those type of, that's usually the way that I go. But most guys are really trying to, they would love a 24-hour turnaround if they could. I spent $100. I put it up for 100 or I put it up for 150. I made my money back. I got some profit. Good. And I'm on to the next one. But for me, that's just real tiring at the end of the day. It's easier for me to maintain an inventory. But you're getting that because a lot of the guys, 2021, 2019, 2020, because of the influx of money the guys got through COVID. That was one, but also the time that people had. They had time. There were a lot of people working from home. You didn't have inflation, so because of those things that are going on now, you don't have books are still selling. I'm still making good
Hmm.
numbers, but not as quickly. Not as quickly. It's pretty much back to where it was. It's just not going as quickly as it was. And then you have guys who got into it because they were like, "Oh wow, look at all the money in comics. Look at all this money. I'm going to get in here." But then people unfortunately don't realize it's not like that all the time. There are certain factors that are going in here, and that's why you're making this money. So when it's not happening, you're like, "Oh, I just spent 3 grand on a collection," because you're used to making that money back within 30 days, 45 days. Now it's taking you longer, 90 days, 120 days. So it becomes, look, I don't know what the hell, I don't know what I'm doing. Things didn't work out the way that I wanted. I'm getting rid of all of it. And when they get rid of all of it, it tends to be at some rock. It tends to be at some. I mean, I was going to this guy who I buy from, and he was at a show, and he was selling everything. We're talking nice books, $10 books I could sell for 20. I could easily sell for 20 or 100. Some really good stuff at the end of the day. And I took as much as I could manage, and that was the end of it. And he's an experienced seller. But when I saw that, I was like, okay, he's probably got a lot of inventory. He just needs to get rid of stuff. It's just
Hmm.
too much stuff, and he's got to get it done. So this has been the great sell off. Now, for guys who are still buying, if you're guys who are buying, like me, you're a buyer, you look, you say, okay, you can really get some nice deals. But the one thing that I did look at is, say, okay, let me look at some of the bigger books, those key books, like an Amazing Spider-Man #7 or an Amazing Spider-Man 300, or even a book like Superman 14. Did that fluctuate in price? No, no, still expensive. It's still expensive. It's like a whole bunch of the other stuff that guys might have invested in based on the Marvel TV shows or the upcoming Black Adam film, and they're not seeing any movement on those particular books. So they're dropping that stuff. I mean, they're dropping that stuff. They're dropping some other stuff as well. But a lot of the other stuff that's really key, and this is the important thing. The guys aren't moving their prices on it. The bigger stuff, the prices aren't moving, which shows you a real difference in the market because it used to be that, oh, this didn't hit, I couldn't get 500, overnight it's down 50%, 250. And collectors would just wait until the price lowered and they would go and scoop it up. This time the prices are actually holding firm, So if that happens, that's pretty good because that means that the numbers will stay where they are, and the collectability of comics is pretty much here to stay. Otherwise, it becomes like, oh man, you're going to find books that were worth $50 in the quarter bin again, some real 1990s stuff.
Well, is this during this time? Do you stock up a lot on stuff?
Certain stuff, yes. I mean, I've been offered, I don't know how many copies, like Amazing 300, Amazing Spider-Man 300, which is a big key. And usually if I see one or two within a year, that's a lot. But I've already seen like guys offering like 5 or 6 copies of that. That's to me. And I'm not, somebody who's actively, that's not a book I actively look for. But I'll see that popping up. I'll see other books. I just picked up a whole nice run of Silver Age Spider-Man, really good prices on the whole thing. And then you put them up and you wait. But the biggest thing was that you got guys who came in and didn't necessarily know how it goes when it comes to selling this stuff because I mean, this was something that happened to me initially as well. At one point, we might have been making $1,000 a week, and when that slows down to $1,000 a month, you're like, you start staring at the ceiling while you're going to sleep, like, what the hell have I done? But
Mm.
one of the big changes that you'll see is like if you speculated on a book like She-Hulk books, you might see, oh, no She-Hulk books moved during the show, nothing. And this is very different than what happened with, say, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where books were actively moving while that series was out. She-Hulk, nothing really moved. Okay, there's some stuff here and there, but nothing really moved at the end of the day. However, what you will find is after the show is over, that's when you'll see some movement. Give yourself a few, maybe like 3, as much as 4 weeks after the show, and you'll notice a lot of the books start moving then because guys are being advised, no, 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 don't buy anything while the show is out. Wait till the show after the show, and then go look. So if you hold to your price even after the show, that's the price for the book, and you can make some money.
So with the last question I have is with the D23, was there any spike with that happening with any of the Marvel news?
No, not really. I mean, because a lot of the stuff was like, oh, we got these shows coming out, but the speculation against the TV shows has been so hit or miss that you're
Mm.
not seeing a lot of movement there. The last thing I saw some movement on was there was an announcement that Wolverine was going to be in Deadpool, and heck, I sold the book to Rob Liefeld. So okay, it may not be the actual Rob Liefeld, but
But
I sold it to somebody named Rob Liefeld. So that was the last time I saw something that really jumped. Wolverine 150, that went up. I think Wolverine 80, that also went up first. Fight between Deadpool and Wolverine. So those sorts of books went up. But then you got to be really careful because now you decide, oh, I'm going to pick up these books based on that. Speculation with comics is usually like a 72-hour window. And the closer you get to the end of that window, the harder it is to sell that book based on speculation, where it's some announcement like this. So, you want to be careful if you're actually throwing it in. I also want to say I don't do as much comic book hero anymore because I at some point I said, you know what, I'm helping people too much. You guys got to go out there and rough and tumble and find this stuff out because people are taking bad advice, and that affects the overall market. Gave people good advice, didn't want to listen. Okay, but every here and there, I think there's a good one to put out, and this is a good one. So if you're somebody and you're serious about it, put it up, okay, for your price. And you should really not be looking to make money on or killer money on these bigger books. You should still be looking to get books, at a good price that you can mark up and sell those. That's where your money is going to be coming in from. Not, well, I threw $500 on these Invincible books and they're not taking off. I guess I'm going to have to just take a loss and sell them. Like, no, the show's not out. If you buy the stuff and you can't wait for the show to come out, don't buy those books. Buy
mm.
books that you know that you can sell. Go for the books. Go roaming through those dollar bins. Get yourself all the ones that you can sell for 10. $10 is that's probably like the best number in comics. A $10 book, you can get 10 for it. Great number. Once you start getting over that, that's more tricky unless you've got yourself established. You got a bit of the locomotive running.
All right. So is there anything else you want to add to this?
It's well, all the other thing I would tell guys, you got to be, if you have a good book, I'm pretty certain you heard the same thing. There'll be some guy at a show or some guy somewhere, and he says, "Oh, you know what book I used to have? I used to have Incredible Hulk 181." What's the story that you always hear? The mom threw it out, okay, or they lost it or what have you. But the worst one is the guy who had the book and he sold it. And when he sold it, at the time he got $1,000, and that was top dollar. And then this guy has the nerve to say, "Oh, I had Hulk 181, sold it for $1,000 like back in the 90s. Oh, wish I had it now. Wish I had it now." You don't want to be that person. Okay, the guy who's, oh, wish I had it now. And in this situation, a lot of times, wish I had it now is a space of 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
So if you got some good stuff, don't start. Well, I'm going to fire sale this whole thing. That you got to really check your intestinal fortitude. You see where your testicular strength is at the end of the day, and don't just turn it over because you're listening to some bad information on the show or it didn't sell right away. You have to look at the book for the value that it has. I have a copy of Giant Size X-Men #1. I've got a ridiculously high price on that book. But I said, look, I already know this is a short thing. As soon as, I mean, the X Men eventually are going to come to the MCU. That's the first appearance. It's the third appearance of Wolverine. It's in really nice shape. It's not an easy book to find. I'm not going to go cheap on it. And so, you'll get, dealers who will try to, go, what's the old thing? Oh, you never know. Let me try something over here. Those guys get rejected, and eventually it'll be in the hands of a collector who generally wants it. But that's where you got to be. You can't fire sale a good book. I understand that, sometimes things happen. You may need to turn over, get some money. But if you're a serious seller, okay, you can't turn over a good book cheaply. You've got to get your number. You've got to get your number for that book, or else it does not work. So you sell off the other stuff. Maybe some of the lighter stuff you can. I need some money in. You can go light on some of the lesser stuff that you have, but the big stuff, no. Okay, that stuff gets held until you get the price that you want for it. Hopefully, you're not asking some ridiculous amount of money that it's never going to get. Okay, but for me right now, like whatever the market is on Giant Size, I know I'm probably asking double or triple as for what it is, but I know that that book is going to get there, as opposed to say like Crystar the Crystal Warrior, and you're asking $1,000 for it. That's never going to happen. Okay, or at least you won't be alive when it happens. So if you're serious about it, you hold your number. You try to make certain that you buy books in a manner where you can have a big key and you can sell off some of the other stuff to make that money back, make some profit, and then when that book sells, it's a nice windfall for you, and you can pat yourself on the back, for being smart about it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to get into it because comic books not being bad. You've got to have patience. You've got to have discipline. You've got to have the right knowledge for the books. Okay. Otherwise, you're at the behest of a whole bunch of dealers out there who are just waiting for guys to put up books, for, with a 1 cent auction. And then when it sells for I bought a book the other day for 10 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This was a key book. Okay. No, rather, it's not a key book, but it was a variant cover that other guys were asking like $40, $50. This guy put it up for 1 penny. And it ended up selling for 10 cents at the end of the day, which I just thought was ridiculous. But it's mine now, and I'm not selling it for 10 cents. So you don't want to be in that position. You don't want to be this guy, oh, I wish I had it now. Okay. And you don't want to buy books to the point where you're forced to sell them because you didn't do it in a manner where the bigger books can wait and the smaller books are going to make your money back. But what can I say? So, this has been a great year for me in terms of buying because everybody's been selling, and next year I'll reap the benefits of it.
Well, what was it? I think one of the hard things, 'cause I was watching like Rob Liefeld with a bunch of comic art buyers, and
Mm-hmm.
they were always talking about somebody else who was living in shambles to keep their original art. I'm just like, but it's like you can't, like it's more important to hear, not saying you have to tell your horror stories, but when you have a group of major people in a room talking about this, saying the thing of that, like the person who sells the Hope 101 for 1,000, and then the other person sells it for 2,000. The person who's buying it is in the tax bracket to make that next money, and usually it won't be that much, but you'll look at it and be like, well, I sold Hope 181 for 10 grand, and someone he sold it after me for 20 grand. And that's terrible. I could have got 20. Like, well, no, not at that point. You couldn't have
No, you
gotten
were never going to get it.
it. But you would get whatever you needed it for, or whatever you use it for. This is the part of the business as a seller. That's what you do. Or you're doing it to buy other things to make it. In the end, it works out as a as a seller, Or if you just need the money and you sold it, that's the story rather than most people talk about. I mean, the hard part with a lot of the watching those original art guys is that they still talk about kind of keep in line of what's good and what's bad, right? As far as what'll sell and what'll do. It's not any talking about appreciation, which kind of is really sad because they look like guys that be into it, but they're like, hey, I want to tell you some stories about, well, it's only, obviously, it's Rob Liefeld. Tell me, let me tell you a story about Burns' art dealer coming on here. He came there with some Fantastic Four, but the Fantastic Four, he didn't have any X-Men. And it's just like, yo, like those Fantastic Four, the issue like 255. I don't know if you remember the story, but each page is like a good over well in the almost in the 10 grand to like 6 to 7 grand stage a page. So it's just like if you sat there and said, "Hey, why don't you just give me all of that stuff for $50? Let me give me three of those things." And then next thing you know, you're like sitting on something that you think that's not worth nothing. And it's just some random FF page. And now you're like, wow, the X-Men stuff has propelled the Fantastic Four stuff. And, so it's kind of hard to look at a lot of people who kind of
What
like point out
what you bring
the
up is a great
difference.
point. No, I said what you bring up is a really good point. With the I mean, you were around with me, so you know that the comic book art used to be dirt cheap.
Mhm.
This was something you could get. You could get some really nice pages. You can get really nice pages, and the amount of money people were paying for it you look back on it now, it's like it's insane because these were one of a kind pieces, beautiful pieces from key books, and they were just being sold. Now I get what the guys you're talking about, where these guys are living in dilapidated homes, and they're like, no, I got to keep this art. And you're like, well, you got to keep all of it. I'm certain there are some pieces that you might want to let go of more than others, but it's the same thing where as the story goes, at least the what I heard, there was like some guys were going to John Byrne and getting commissions, and then putting the commissions on eBay. They paid $500 for the commission, and we're asking $6,500 on eBay. So eventually that's how that's how the stuff went up. With with comics, it's already there. Because comics, were the forerunner to the art. So I mean, which is crazy because you would literally have, I mean, a cover page and a splash page would have gotten top dollar, but even then it was still ridiculously cheap in comparison. I mean, not even in comparison, it was just really undervalued. And now with now you have the same situation with the comics where, yeah, you don't want to be like, well, you know what, I got a hole in the wall, and there's looks like there might be some wolves out there every night looking like they can get in here. Maybe I should, get some contract in here. But no, I got to hold on to these comics. No, you got to sell them. You got to sell them, if you need the money for certain things. And it's no different for me. If I get somebody who makes a good offer, I mull it over. But, if I can say, look, I'll take the money on this one because I know I have other stuff down the pike. I can use that. I can reinvest into some other stuff. But what you made a good point was the guy who sells for $1,000, he, okay, depending on what time it was and what other factors may be there, if you sell it for $1,000, all right, how much did you pay out for the book? How much went back into your pocket? And if you're a seller and a buyer, how much can you reinvest based on that money that you made? As opposed to the guy who waited and got his number, okay, great. He's got all of the money back, a suitable profit. And if he made enough money, he can go out there and buy more books that are higher value because he's making more money. So, $10 books going through the dollar bins, I never frown on that. That's why I started. I still do that. But when you're making bigger money, you can go after bigger books. If you're, I mean,
Yes,
I made this mistake
yes,
where
yes.
I would bundle up books in a short box
Hmm.
at conventions. And I mean, I had some nice stuff in there. The last time I did it, I had a first appearance of Grendel, uh, first issue of Swamp Thing. It was a really nice batch. And I was struggling to get money for these books.
Hmm.
One was a variant that the guy didn't even realize it was a variant. These guys were so close to the best. And that's when I realized their numbers had to be a lot different than mine. Because I was thinking the number I priced it at, I said, okay, this is something you should be able to get. A lot of the guys don't sell online. They only want to sell cash. Their profit margin isn't there. So when I learned that, I said, okay, I'm never doing this again because I just sold off a whole bunch of stuff. And it was literally, this was 2018. And the very next year, all these books, went up in value. And I
Hmm.
had most, if not all of them. And I said, look, if it's a book and it's rare and I know it's going to be hard to to find this again because it's this sort of a variant or it's an error copy, I'm not going cheap on it and I'm not doing that stuff again. I'm not just going to turn over books because I can make a quick killing. It also makes you dependent on these guys, which is never good. But I
Mhm.
learned a lot from that. I said, "Oh no, okay, this is how we're going to do it. You're gonna, you're gonna keep this in the pocket, all right, so you can make certain that you can buy bigger books in the future, and you just got to be patient." I had a, I'm trying to remember, I forget. Just recently, I sold this book as well. I can't remember the name of the book, but I sold it for, I think I sold it for like 2 grand or something. I can't remember what the book was, and I don't remember exactly how long I had it up. But when it came, a better example is I had a first appearance of Werewolf by Night, Jack Russell, Marvel Spotlight number 2, and I, it was bought it as a part of a bundle, so I got a bunch of books, and I think for the entire bundle, I spent about $1,000, maybe a little bit more, and I sold the Werewolf by Night book. I sold for like 1,200. I sold that book after I had sold a whole bunch of other stuff. So I had already pretty much gotten the majority of the money back. And when that book came through, it was a $1,200 profit.
Man.
Okay. So I was already whole. I had gotten all my money back on the smaller books. That was the profit book, 1,200, pocket some. And now I can go. And if it's a book that's out there and it's a top book, it's rare and it's $500, hey, I can throw that down there. I've already got all my money back. I got some profit if I want to do something else for myself with some money, and I can invest in a better book, which of course I'm going to put up for a good price and wait for that to sell. But this year right here, I saw a lot of guys were just like, "Hey, you know what? Guys, well, and comic guys unfortunately tend to be like this. It's different with toys and other collectibles.
Well,
But this it was the sky is falling. I got to get rid of this junk.
well, I always go to the original art because it's always fun listening to the comic creators when they were actually getting the art, and they would just basically, you know, they would go over to whoever person they like a Burn would go and be like, "Hey, I want hey, Jose. I need some of your art. I'll trade you. I'll buy it. Whatever you want to do." He's, "Oh, well, let's
Oh
trade."
yeah.
And they would trade. They routinely artists was like, "Hey, I like this page. Hey, I'll give it to you. Here's a Christmas present." And the art dealers are like, "What are you doing with it?" The person like, "Hey, Klaus, could I get this? I really like that page." That one, I gotta see if I somewhere in the basement. When yeah, I think when Burns art dealer before he was an art dealer, it was Mike Zeck's art dealer, and Mike Zeck they went over to Burns' house and he went and saw it. And he expected it to be in like some sort of pristine thing, and it was just like in the basement on like a shelf, and he kind of organized it and put it in a pile. So it's just like it's just fun hearing the comic artists are just like, it's like, hey, as a
Hey,
kid,
that's
both of your friends and being like, hey, can I take that off your head? You got any of your stuff? I want some of your stuff to put on my wall. He's like, you want some of my stuff? Yeah, whatever you want. It's like, yeah, what can I get of yours? Oh, I got this. Oh yeah, I'll take it. That sort of
the
thing.
funny thing is that was the same for comics.
Hmm.
You would have guys. I mean, I mean, this is like around. I mean, this is still very prominent in the '90s when God. I mean, like now you get a book and it's graded and it says it's got color touch on it. Guys run around like, oh, terrible. The thing is ruined. I was like, no, if the top is trimmed, okay, I can understand that. Or if somebody messed around with some staples, or it's all like put together with with magic tape, I can understand those things. But color touch, and it's like a little light area of it that's been touched. You guys are crazy. Of course, I'll take that book. But trading was this thing that was, I'll trade you this for that. And you look at, well, what did you trade? Oh, I traded Incredible Hulk 181 for like a long box of Superman, 100 to 200. You're like, oh yeah, and you're like what? You got to be kidding me. That's not a fair trade. You should have gotten like some other stuff. These books are dirt cheap. But it was it was really common at the time that guys wanted to, hey, you willing to trade? And then the trades were bad because they wanted to trade one for one. And you're like, no, my book, that book is more valuable. You can't do one for one. You got to do like, something where you're getting like pretty much double whatever that book is worth, because that book has a lot of potential in the future where this stuff doesn't.
But definitely when there was kids trading, it was just like here, trade me this, and then sometimes you trade back for the book you had for. It's like, no, I want that back. I got this other book. Okay, we'll trade that back, and just like would be no care, just like saying, I just need this. I need these books, and that sort of thing. And then of course, like but yeah, remember a short period of actually doing the trading, which or indoor trading. With I don't think that went on for too long trading with my brother, where we're just like, all right, this is in the house. Like I can just look at this thing right here. So when he puts it down,
I was never big on trading. I always found the trading sucks because I
well,
would
at some
look and it's
point
like,
later, yeah, obviously you put it in there, or the other side of just lending them out. I've been through that, and then like, hey, what's if Robert got all these cool comic books? Well, what does he got? And he's like, oh, Small will team up, did this. I was like, come on, those are all mine. He said he wanted to get in comic books. I let him borrow some comic books to read and forgot.
yeah,
And he's like, don't want to, he's not into comic books. He's like, these things here, Dennis, here, you take them. It's just like, oh, just get them. And then they just handed them back. So it's just like one of those things. But it's like, that's the other part of what you're talking about is what, like Dennis was kind of trying to do to me, to saying that Robert had this big time collection, and I wasn't asking him it to, to say mine is better, just to hear what he had. I'm just like, the same instance of, when we first kind of met Dixon and found like he had comic books, to go over and read his comic books, and that's all the guy at the end of my block, because he was even more of a collector than this guy Ted. He's kind of like, kind of weird dude, but he had comic books. He'd be like looking at the corners and the staples and all this other stuff when he look at your comics and this, that, and the other. And but he had a collection, but he wouldn't really let you read them. And he was only maybe he was like the guys. He's like maybe 5 years older than us, type of deal. But yeah, he had comic books and bagging them, and he like you have something, and then he'd be like, oh, like not really. You're a kid. I'm a kid reading them. I was really at that point early on. I wasn't really thinking about keeping everything in like perfect order, perfect thing, and then you start getting called out on that stuff, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. So I gotta get that on that game. But that's what kind of the hard part of thinking about Hulk 181. So luckily, if I probably did buy it, I already had the reprint. But then in my head, I still saying, I gotta crack this open. I gotta I gotta look at it. I gotta look at the actual one in comparison. But it's or whenever I go to, we talked about one Hulk 81, and that's what my last thing I'm gonna say. It's funny because whenever I go to it, I still find myself reading it and not being caught up into like other things, because like Wolverine is kind of he's still kind of vicious, the kind of the one that Byrne was kind of doing, like trying to get that guy with no sort of remorse for what he was doing. When he cuts into the Wendigo, that's much better. It's like he's still got some good stuff to him, where people might look, oh look, the costume looks funky. Oh, like Herb Trimpe is not in favor anymore. It's like, look, there's a whole story. The woman with the Hagar the Horrible hat, and she's a mystic,
yeah,
and Paul, the guy who is in love with her, and is just following her around like an idiot. And then then she don't realize it till the end. It's just like, that's some powerful stuff. It's like all these supporting characters that ain't been in the book introduced in 180. So it's like you got this whole story, which would be, it was three part, part of the two, I guess 2.1 parts, but it had all these characters that you can't really do that anymore, where you have a character that's going to be a part of this story, and you'll basically, obviously the
well,
Wendigo character got brought back, but
that's where. See, I didn't originally was not a comic seller. I was a toy seller. All right. If you have to ask me like where my heart really lies, it's toys. If I could get rid of if I could sell all the comics and go back into toys, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would still collect comics for me,
mhm.
okay. But the toy selling was so easy because toys cost more money. You got to have more money to get into them. There's no quarter box of toys or dollar toy. It's just not there. You want an action figure? You got to have like $10 or better in order to get it to start. Okay, that's like a cheap one at the end of the day. But when I got into comics, I thought it would be similar to toys, except that people would buy a toy because they like this character. or they like these particular figures, these particular lines. They had some chase figures here and there, but not to the extent what they have with comics. But when I got the comics, I was like, okay, so people are going to buy this for the stories, maybe some of the cover art. And I was quickly, shown no, nobody wants any of that. I was like, what? What do you mean nobody wants any of it? It's like all these great stories. Nope, don't care, don't care. Well, what do they buy? It's got to be a first appearance or a rare issue or an error thing. And I was like, you're kidding me. I was like, all these great stories and all these guys care about is how rare it is. Then I find out, oh, okay, Image Comics, Wizard, all this, you get all this backstory and all this history, and you're like, fine. But then I saw what the comic book companies did. They were like, okay, so we're just manufacturing rarity. I mean, you brought it up with, was it Ultimate Spider-Man, where they said, look, let's make this collectible. Let's drop the numbers on this thing. It's one thing if a book had legitimate numbers where like you're looking like the last issues of Werewolf by Night, where this thing is selling. I mean, it's still selling a lot for a Bronze Age issue in comparison to a modern day issue. But the print run is just really low, and not a lot of guys are buying it. So okay, that's just natural. What happens to a book where these guys are releasing a book at 6,000 copies, knowing that there's like a million comic readers, and then of course, becomes something that's sought after because it's like incredibly rare, or 250 copies, that sort of stuff. So when I came, it took a while for me to that was a learning curve for me. Thankfully I got it, but to understand that no, as good as this story is and all this other type of stuff, nobody cares. All they care about first appearance of Wolverine. Okay, that's it. And then with like, is this the first appearance? Because I got issue 180. He's in that one. No, 181 is the first appearance. I don't understand. He's right here. He talks. He's on the page. It's a full it's a full panel. Why is this the first appearance and this one's not? Well, and then I would listen to these comic book answers, and finally I realized, oh, okay, because this book has all the money in it. 181 has all the money in it. Nobody's, there's no way. That book is so expensive now. There's no way anybody's going to accept that as less than the first appearance. Forget about it. Nobody bought that book for 60 grand and they want to hear 180 is the actual first appearance. 180 did tick up in value as it should have because, and this was another comic feature that I saw, it was the first appearance and everything else was trash. So the first appearance, 181, 60,000. Well, what about 180? It actually does come first. And, we got this. I'll give you $100 for it. I mean, it was like wild. It was wild at that point. I could get that book for a song in a lot of instances. And I was able to like fill out collections with the exception of 181. I was able to fill out collections like that. And thankfully it changed. Because I said, this book is ridiculously undervalued. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that going on. I would always have these great debates as to why is Gambit this sought after character and Bishop isn't. And these guys would tell me, well, because of this, that, and the other. I was like, hey, it's the same thing for Bishop. Well, Gambit's sort of an anti-hero. I was like, so is Bishop. Oh, well, Gambit, came around this time. So did Bishop. I was like, I don't understand. Why is this? I say, not that he's a more popular character. I understand that. But the value, the guys are willing to pay so much money for this character as opposed to this one, when they're pretty much along the same lines in the same tracks. It didn't really, nothing passed the smell test, nothing passed any scrutiny. But over time, so much money is thrown into the Gambit book. There's so much money thrown into that book where you're like, okay, I spent $40 on this book. I'm not selling it for $5. I want to make my money back in some profit. So that happens. And then of course, you have sellers who go in and they're like, look, it doesn't matter to me if this guy ever did anything or not, or if this even is his first appearance. I know I can get at least $60 for it because guys are always ate for this book. So you have those type of things going on with comics as well. And that's changed a little because now it's not just the first appearance where you can make money on. I mean, you don't have the first appearance of the Vulture. I get it. But the second appearance is no less a rare book, to be quite honest. So, that shouldn't be a book, that shouldn't be a $50 book at the end of the day. And it actually reflects a lot of the rareness too now, because even a book that would be like a 2.0, that type of stuff in terms of grade, you can still get like, a few $100 for it. Mm-hmm. Because it's just isn't a book that pops up on the radar. Guys are used to be like, oh, it's missing a chunk here. It's got some writing. I'm like, okay, do you have one?
Yeah.
If you have one, I get it. But if you don't have one, this is the price for this right now. And if I had a better copy, I would be asking more. So those type of things, I try to apply to a situation where, you're having this sell-off. It's a lot of guys who have, they're just selling stuff off. They need room. It's not moving as fast. And the profit margins are not quite. Everybody's mileage is different. Not trying to put myself above anybody else, but profit margins are different. And if your profit margins are different, that also means how long can you wait? If you can wait 6 months, a year to get your money because you got other stuff going on, then you're in a good shape. If you are somebody who needs to make money like quarterly or every bi-monthly, then yeah, you're gonna have to turn over some stuff, which is what happened this year.
Yeah, so I mean, the problem is, I think the last bit would be the guilting you of what your price is, saying, how can you put this up? Like, how can you put this as that when it's
Like
this and the
put it up
second
like this.
appearance is not worth it's two this and this is like, are you the comic judge of prices? Like, when did this come up? Either you can just say, hey, that's out of my. I go to comic stores and look up there and say, oh, that one is something I want. I can't do it, and then I walk out. I would be like, oh, f you. You and your bad prices, you gouge everyone out here. It's like the body snatchers. They're gonna get you. You run out of cars. They're selling comics way above the price. You can get it somewhere else. I don't know where. I'm not gonna tell you where, but yeah.
I, well, we didn't have the internet, so people couldn't send you some nasty email saying, "Hey, your price is this," and nobody was going to go to a con and like pick a fight with you over your price. They would just look at it and say, "Oh wow, I don't think the book is worth that," and you just move, would just move on. You might, commiserate with your friends, like, "Oh man, I went to the show and everything was high priced and I didn't like the condition." That was pretty much the end of it. But I had a book up with, I had a book that was estimated the grade on it, no problem. I get an email, "You've got to be crazy, out of your mind, that this book is this grade." And I was like, well, I don't understand. What are you using to estimate the grade? I'm using a CGC book. I was like, excuse me? I'm using a CGC book. I take a book and I put it next to the CGC book, and if it looks the same, that's the grade. I was like, I said, you can't estimate a book like that. CGC doesn't estimate a book like that. They don't take a book and put it next to a previous graded copy and say that's a 7. You got to look at the book. Okay, you got to hold it under the light. You got to look to see if it has all the pages. And I was thinking, what guide are you using? CGC has their own guide. I said, I would use like Heritage. I find that to be a really good guide at the end of the day, or CVCS. What guide are you using to come to this? You're grading this just because you got a graded copy in encapsulated, and that's how you use it. It's like, you can't grade it like that. But that's that's the internet.
Yeah. So I think well, we got into some other things too, but
That's us.
this market has been having this ups and downs, but hopefully this will get the mile high prices down for a little while. I think they got.
Never.
I think I recently bought. I mean, not recently, but in the last, I bought from three places. I don't remember Mile High being that terrible as it is now. Now it's just like, hey, we're hoarding this stuff and we got our day jobs. So you want some of our comic books, you're gonna pay out the nose. So we're
That's the
not
other
playing
thing
games.
though. That's the other thing where these guys don't seem to get it, and the smarter sellers understand. If this is a book that people is sought after, and you got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Mile High Comics, I can imagine how many copies they would have of a key book. I mean, yeah, they can just put the price up and they can wait because eventually it's going to come around to their number. That's just the waiting game, and they can afford to wait. If you're a collector, you really need to understand that. Okay, you really need to understand it because a lot of times guys, oh, I'll wait for this, I'll wait for that. And no, if this guy's buying up all the cheap copies, and I've done this, I had there was some books on eBay that there was like a Green Lantern book that I saw. Look, this is a pretty good book. I think I can make some money here. So I looked and I said, how many copies are here? There's like 6 copies for sale. I think somebody was asking 40, somebody was asking 50, and then the rest of them were like over 100. So I bought every cheap copy over there. I bought every cheap copy, and then I put mine up for like double of what the other guy was asking, but at the highest price, and waited. Eventually, everything sold, and I got my money simply because I played it correctly at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So if you're going like, look, I'm waiting for the price to go back down. Well, if somebody goes and buys up all the cheap copies, which they're free to do, it doesn't matter. You're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to pay a high price anyway. So if you're a collector, and you really need to recognize that as a collector because I still collect. And I see that myself too. I'm like, well, how many copies are here? There's 10 copies. All right, what's the cheapest price? $39.99. What's the next cheapest price? $79.99. So I can wait for an auction. I can wait for somebody to pick it up, and I do that. But I look, and if I see the auctions, I mean, I've seen literally where they were putting up auctions $1, and then every auction got closer and closer to the asking price of what this other guy was asking. So I said, this book is, I don't know what's going on with this book, but it's going to take off. It's not going to be a $39.99 book or anything of that nature. And the auctions are too close to the asking prices here. Either I'm going to win this auction or I'm going to have to pay this price. And you got to be able to recognize that, because a lot of times collectors are just like, I'll wait for the price to go down. It may go down. You may get lucky on an auction, or you don't really want it. And you got to be honest with yourself about that too. If the only time that you want the book is, well, I only want the book if I can get it for the price that I want, then you don't really want it. When you're willing to pay the money, then that's being asked for it, then you actually want the book. I mean, in 2022, what would you think? What would you say is the best score that you've had in terms of getting a book?
Me, I think well, I think the last time I really bought some stuff was in the year before at the con. That's when I really searched for stuff. Outside of that, I mean, look what I got, some Legion Superheroes this year. Oh, I got the Silver Surfer graphic novel. I think it's Judgment Day, and that didn't cost too much. That was like, I don't know, 30 or 40, something like that. But it had
It's pretty
another
good.
book with it, but it was like a warped Punisher graphic novel with it. So it's like, I've made out, I got this Punisher graphic novel. It's a little warped. So it's kind of just like something they kind of threw in with it. So I think I went on a thing of, when the last year's con, I went on this thing of getting the Silver Surfer, what was it, the Silver Surfer graphic novel that Jack Stanley and Jack Kirby did. At that same con, I said I felt it was too expensive, but I was just saying I don't know why Parable costs more in this reprinted, the large hardcover edition. They're not doing anything extra with the pages, but I just needed to have it. So that was, I think that one was like, that was like
That one right over there, that's a really good buy. Anytime it's like one of these hardcovers, it's always low printed. Most guys balk at the price, and it's usually a really nice edition. So they
yeah,
don't make too many of them because they already know. Look, at the price point, we're only going to sell so many of these. So it usually only gets one printing, and then later on, guys, either guys said, you know what, I got some money. Let me see if I can find it now. And then when they look at the price, they're like, oh, what happened? But they still want it. Or there were guys who never knew it existed, and now they look at it and they go at it. It's the same thing for some of the numbers I see on these trades and hardbacks like that. I think the best score I made was, Wally Wood's series Sally Forth.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've always been thinking about buying that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean the big one is Adam Hughes's.
yeah,
That Adam Hughes does a cover for issue 8, so
that's,
that's the big one.
yeah, I know
That's the
that
big
one.
one.
Yeah. I
Yeah, and usually,
see that what's the name at the Village Comics when it was around. I always see it and think about buying it. Yeah.
yeah. So usually that book goes for up to $500,
Mm.
and I got the whole set for 350.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I got the whole set for free, 350. So I've been selling off 1 through 8, 1 through 7, selling them off premium each issue. And then when all those are gone, I'm still gonna have the Adam Hughes. I'll still have the Adam Hughes book. I'm gonna make all the money back on the 1 through 7 books. Because to be honest, that's pretty much what they go for. They range anywhere from 20. They range anywhere from 20 to $40 depending on condition. So I've been doing a lot more sales overseas as well. So that actually helps out. But and I mean, it's been, some of the overseas stuff is crazy because it'll be a trade paperback, and I'm asking $60 for it, and the guy will pay $60 for the book plus $60 to have it shipped to him. Where I got guys here and they're like, oh man, they're trying to nickel and dime. Can I come and pick it up from you? No, you can't come and pick it up from me. I don't know you. You can't come over here and pick up this book. But that right over there, when I see that type of demand, I said, no, everything is there. It just slows down because people don't. I mean, what you got people fighting wars, and prices going up. Yeah, they may not have the wherewithal, but the desire for it hasn't changed. And when they get the money, they're still dropping the cash for it. And again, anytime I see that, I said, look, there's probably still room to grow in terms of the overall market because you're still getting these particular numbers. Oh, but
Oh, so
that was
here I
that was
go.
the that was the best one I did.
So I got this thing here, and I think this. I know this one is in the mail. I got that one in the mail. And
Oh, the what is it? The what is it? The Ultimate Cosmic Experience?
yeah, And this is the
I,
Silver Surfer one that the
I
John.
got both.
Yeah, got that.
I'm looking for that in hardcover. I want to get that in hardcover one day. The
Yeah,
Silver Surfer one.
this one isn't. Yeah, this is hardcover.
That one I have, and the other one, the Ultimate Cosmic Experience. If I can get that in hardcover, I'll be really happy. I
Is
had
there
two.
one? Is there one from back in the day that was a hardcover?
There's a hardcover, and it just never gets on my radar because I know I want it, but I'm never actively looking for it. And then
Mhm.
periodically I'll remember, isn't it? Oh yeah, I'm still looking for that hardcover, and I just don't, put out any feelers to let people know, hey, if you come across one, let me know. I'll buy it off.
But there's one. I know there was one in the '90s, but it'd be cool to see the one if there was one in the '70s that was a hardcover. Cause
I think because it was a fireside. It was a fireside edition.
yeah,
To the best of my knowledge, all the fireside editions came out because Marvel was trying to treat them like books.
mm-hmm.
So all the fireside editions had a hardcover release and a softcover release,
Mm-hmm.
all of them. So there's a hardcover edition out there. I thought I came pretty close to one because somebody had advertised it as a hardcover, and then when I got it, he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's a softcover. You still interested?" I said, "Yeah, I'm interested. I'll buy it. I'll sell it." But that's not what I really wanted. That's not what I really wanted for myself.
Yeah, the only well, at the same kind I got the Silver Surfer. I got this. I just the Spectacular Spider-Man magazine. I was just like, well, it's here. It's one of those things where you just been sitting around and being like, but the other thing I've just been on a big kick. I know at the con I'm going to try to get
You're pulling
some
up some
of
good stuff. You know the history
the
behind
graphic
the
novels, huh?
the history behind the Spectacular Spider-Man issue right there.
I only know that Romita wanted to do it. What's your history on it?
That was actually Spider-Man's second series
Mm-hmm.
because initially they were like, okay, we want to see if there's a market for Spider-Man to have another series, a Spider-Man series, not a Marvel team up or anything of that nature, another Spider-Man series. So they put that out, and I don't remember if it was in black and white or what have you,
Yeah, it's
but
black and white. Yeah.
I think it did. I don't remember. It didn't do a long. I think it was like maybe 3 issues, five at the most. But it came out, didn't do well, and so they put that to bed. And then afterwards, I know they still did some more stuff with Marvel Team Up, and then they decided let's try again, but this time we'll do it comic book form as opposed to doing it like closer to magazine form.
Mm-hmm.
And plus those issues also had like reprinted material. So they came out, let's do all new material, Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man, and that's where we got it. But that's actually the second. A lot of people think Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man is the second series, and that's actually the second series right there.
Yeah, so yeah, but at this con, I think there's a bunch of things I want to try to get, but it's just trying to fill stuff that I think I thought I had that I don't have. So it's just kind of odds and ends type of deal. But yeah, hopefully, and more graphic novels to see. That's the kind of thing that I'm trying
Well,
to get.
I would tell you to roll with me, but we both know that'll change once we get to the con to get out of my way.
Well, it's funny because looking at the format, the truly last bit is getting the Alex Ross book that got in the mail, and that's really an old classic Marvel graphic novel or even the DC ones because they just had a slightly longer story. So kind of
Which
people look at those things, they're like, hey, it's not going to be Watchmen because it's not like 32 page like 12 32 page comics in one volume where you got Alan Moore being able to explore every part of the character. This is like a 64 page thing. Some of them would be extra visual or some would just be just a fun story like the Hulk and Thing one, which I think a friend of mine had, and I just read that one like every time I was at his house. So I think he had that and the She-Hulk one, and I
so
ultimately bought the She-Hulk recently, but I mean, I
what
read
book?
both of those. Hmm?
What book is it that you're looking for?
The Hulk thing by Jim Starlin and Bernie Wrightson, where they go to another planet and they fighting all these weird monsters.
What was that Hulk? There was a Hulk thing, big time or something.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah,
remember
that
the.
that one, that one. So when I see that, I'm gonna.
What's
Hmm?
and you're looking for something with Alex Ross?
No, I had the Fantastic Four, but it's just like those graphic novels, same amount of pages. It's only a hard. It's just like the Silver Surfer one. It's just like
Okay,
it's that
no,
style of graphic novel.
I got some Alex. No, I was thinking you want. I was thinking you wanted like Alex Ross's Marvels because I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, and I was like, oh, you can have that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
no, I had definitely. I still have that one. I haven't gone forth to get the larger versions. I'm happy with the smaller ones, and I had the comics. So I'm not. The only thing I've been kind of Alex Ross trying to think of maybe getting the Marvelocity, so I'll have his. and his Unseen, which is to get see some of the more of his Fantastic Four things. But I'm
Yeah.
gonna probably look in to see if that slipcover has some of the backup drawings because this one doesn't. I might have to get that too. So, but yeah, side note, that's a big buzz thing on the YouTube that at least gave us some decent numbers. Is really people have really commented. I think Mars said some people from his job and check that out. So it's good to see some people jazz. But now it's the gripe point that has nothing to do with your comic book hero stuff. The kayfabe guys are like, he should have done it blacklight. The story isn't that much. Blah blah blah. Yo, you got them pulling out all the stops. Shut up. You do better. You do
Well,
better.
comic guys, I mean, I sound like Batman. The comic guys are an interesting and curious lot. A lot of complaints. They all want the big books, don't want to spend any money. Everybody's an expert until they're not. Everybody wants the book until they open their wallet. It's just, I mean, I'll say last bit as well. I was trying to. There was like these toys they got made for Lord of the Rings, and I had got you remember the Balrog that Gandalf fights in the first one?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's Balrog. They made this really nice. It's a big figure, big, like easily 24 inches, in like easily. So, which if you're a toy collector, you understand how much size because you got to have the place to display it. So I had two of these, and I realized, you know what, I don't have the place to display this whole thing. And when I got them, I maybe spent like maybe 100 or so with that, and the price had appreciated to like about $1,000. Okay, it was time to sell. No arguments. No arguments. The only thing the guy asked me, he had one request that I take it out of the box, put it into a box, and then put that back into the other one. He just had a shipping request. Other than that, these guys just literally, these are toys. These are toys. Okay, they're not sculptures. Okay, they're not great, and they're not necessarily great works of art or anything of that, or anything along those lines. They're toys. You take them out of the box, you pose them, or you keep them in the box and display them that way. And these guys will throw down so much money. The toy market didn't slow up at all. There's been no great sell-off, trust me. And then, I mean, you see the stuff McFarlane is doing with DC Comics, beautiful stuff. And the guys are paying hand over fist for this stuff. And with the comic guys, you have something that is literally a mixture of art and literature. And, just literally, it's just trash. It's trash unless I can get it for, 10 cents and then mark it up for $200. Again, it's just so interesting at the end of the day with the approach. But, comic guys had a buyer's market for like, what, 30 years? And there was never any implosion with toys like there were with comics or any of the other collectibles markets that I know of. They slowed down, but, the stuff that's worth money is still worth money, unlike what was going on with the comics in the 90s. So I understand. But if you were thinking of taking part in the great 2022 sell-off, hey, go right ahead. If you want to. But my thing is, hold on. Okay, you want to get out of the game? Get out of the game, but get out of the game slowly. You never know. You may surprise yourself on how you do in terms of your money.
All right, guys. Subscribe, comment, please comment, and and like it, or give some sort of notification, and tell your friends. Spin a rack.
Out.